Hi, this is Emily from Reconnected Life, because rape isn't the end of our story and we do deserve to live a fully reconnected life again. So in today's little video, I want to talk to you about the inner critic, that little voice inside our heads that tells us that we're not good enough, that we can't do this, that we deserve to feel bad, that we're just terrible people, and basically we should just hide underneath the duvet if we know what's good for us. And the thing is, everyone has one of those. Some of those inner critics are more horrible than others, but generally speaking, if we heard anyone speak to our friends the way our voices in our heads speak to us, we'd have something to say about it. And so it's really important to try to get the inner critic under control and on our side, because if the voices inside our heads could be telling us that we do deserve to feel better, that we are amazing, that we are doing the best we can, and that our best is good enough, wouldn't that be a far nicer place to be? So I'm going to talk to you about how you can do that in this video, and what I'd love is for you to share how you go with what I'm talking about. Maybe in the community group, share some comments, or underneath this message, or in reply if you're seeing this on the newsletter. So yeah, do let me know how it goes. So the thing is, as I said, we all have an inner critic, but for survivors like us, our inner critics can be even louder and even harsher than other people's. And that's generally because the critic speaks up whenever the critic thinks that we might come to harm. Actually, the critic is on our side. We've just got a really, really strange way of showing it. So because the critic wants to keep us safe, it wants to keep us in our comfort zone, it wants to keep us from doing anything that it feels might introduce risk into our world. And so by telling us that we're not good enough, by telling us that, oh, if we go to that party, we might not be safe, by telling us that, you know, if we share what's happened to us with somebody, that they might judge us, so we better not, by telling us that actually we look really fat in that dress, so don't leave the house. The underlying motivation of the critic's voice is to keep us safe. And that makes sense because it's coming from inside our heads, yeah? So, you know, inside our heads, we don't actually wish ourselves harm. And our critics are much stronger than other people's because we have really rational reasons to want to keep ourselves safe. So that's all well and good, understanding that, but how do we control the critic? Well, the thing is, once we've understood that the critic is trying to keep us safe, and we understand that actually the critic is trying to be a friend, just going about it in the wrong way, we can befriend that friend. We can talk to it. We can rationalize with it, and we can tell it to go away. So to make this easier, I'm going to share with you the different names that I call my internal parts, because then I won't be referring just to Emily all the time as I'm explaining this, but to the different characters who I've named inside my head. Bear with me, I'm not entirely mad. There is reason behind this logic, this approach. So my inner critic, I have named her the sugarplum fairy. Now for some people, the inner critic may not be a her, may not have a gender, may not be a person, may be an animal, may be an inanimate object. However your inner critic is showing up for you, that's entirely fine. That's the way it works for you. For me, she's the sugarplum fairy. And I decided to call her that because it seemed to suit her character. da, 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 da. You know how I can't sing, but the Dance of the Sugar Plum Fairy in Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker is one of my favourite pieces of classical music. I don't like many pieces of classical music, but that's one of my favourites, and it's my favourite dance, and it's my favourite part of when I used to go to the ballet as a child with my parents at Christmas. And I think I've seen it twice actually only, but in my head, you know, I'm there whenever I hear that music. And by giving my critic that name, I've kind of made her into a person or a character. I see her flitting around, flying around inside my head. She has a little wand. She tends to be flying in amongst the trees. And it just helps that I've given her that character, because basically when she starts to pipe up with her little, "You're not good enough for this, you're not," and she speaks like that too, by the way. You're just too fat. Nothing you're doing is working. Don't know why you bother getting out of bed." You know, when she pipes up like that, I can say, hey, Sugar Plum, how you doing? Nice to hear from you. What is it you're trying to protect me from? You know, you're wrong. I should get out of bed. I've lost weight. I'm not as fat as I was. And I can have an actual conversation. The adult version of me can take charge and speak to the bullying part of me. And so that's the Sugar Plum Fairy. Now the thing is, when the Sugar Plum Fairy is going, she's not bullying adult Emily. She's appealing and picking at the scabs of all the vulnerabilities and fragilities that child Emily still feels and carries with her from, you know, growing up. We all have these different internal scripts of things that happened way before anything bad happened, but also to do with the trauma as well. And so I call the little girl Emily inside my head, I've called her Alice, after Alice in Wonderland, which is one of my favourite books and characters. You see, I kind of go for things, you know, my naming things that mean something to me. And so Alice feels very vulnerable and fragile when Sugar Plum is bullying her. And so again, adult M has to come in and parent and soothe Alice and calm her and tell her, no, don't worry, what Sugar Plum was saying is not true. You are wonderful, you are loved, you are of value, you are worthwhile. And I literally do soothe her. I sometimes, you know, physically will rock a little bit, holding my heart centre, and talk to Alice and tell her that she's loved, and undo all the things that Sugar Plum was saying. Now, that's kind of the scene and what goes on in my head. And I know you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, she's totally mad. But the thing is, when you practice this, your inner critic will pipe up less often. It's just fact. Just when you practice it, your inner critic will pipe up less often. And when you practice it, your inner critic will quiet down quite quickly. So the first step is to acknowledge to the inner critic that you understand that they're coming from a place of love, that they're warning you about something that they feel you need to be warned about. So to acknowledge the motivation is really important, because actually it's when we try to silence the inner critic and say, no, shut up, I'm not listening to you, that the screams and the voices tend to get louder and louder and louder, and they're clamouring in your head. Well, once we can say, actually, I recognise that you're coming from a place of love, you're trying to protect me, the way you're going about it isn't helpful to me, but I hear you. That's what the critic wants to know. The critic wants to know that they've been heard. Then, step 2 is to address what the inner critic is saying. you're too fat, no one loves you, no one likes you, you are a failure at everything, then you can say, well, actually, no, that's not true. Yeah, I didn't do quite so well that one time, but there are other things I've done really well. Yeah, okay, so I'm not as slim as I'd like to be, but I know I'm doing the right things. Or there are very good reasons for why I'm not as slim as I'd like to be right now. So just have, just kind of counter argument, and and prove to the inner critic that they're not actually saying things that are correct. They're lying. They're not lying purposefully, but they are lying. They're incorrect. And then when you've quieted the inner critic, it's really important to go, third step, to go soothe the child part and comfort and say that you're loved. Parent yourself in a way inside your head. It's never too late, no matter what kind of parenting we had, to parent ourselves and to be the parent that we wish we'd had. So be that parent. Take your child self to where you used to have fun. For me, it's the daffodils, sort of a whole sort of sea almost of daffodils in the park behind where my grandparents lived. And I take Alice there and hug her, and we can hear other children playing in the background. We can hear the ducks quacking at the pond, and that's our place. That's where I take Alice to soothe her. And some days I need to take her there quite often. Other days we haven't been. It really does depend what's happening with Sugarplum. So that's it really, 3 steps. Now you can go about this just in your head, just taking on the different character personas, or you can speak out loud in the different voices perhaps, like I shared with you, or even just when your inner critic is full on at you, write it down. What is the inner critic saying? Write it down. Don't censor, just let the inner critic say it. And then take a look and step back as an adult and say, actually, no, that's not right. And write your new responses and show the inner critic how they're wrong. When I used to do it that way and didn't just do it inside my head, I used different colour pens for the different voices. So the inner critic was red because danger. My response was in blue because calm. And then I would write in a green pen for all the love kind of things, and that's because the green represented the grass that I was taking Alice to, and yellow for the daffodils just wouldn't show up. So I hope that that's been helpful about how to still and quiet and calm the inner critic inside your head. As I said, please do share your success, whether or not you think I'm entirely crazy mad, or whether or not you think this is something that might work for you. If you have any other ways that you've used to quiet the voices inside your head when they're criticising you, that would be really helpful to share with others as well. So this is Emily from Reconnected Life, and that's the end of today's video. I hope you've liked it. Thank you. Bye.